If you struggle with perfectionism, today's podcast is for you. Today I'm going to go through an exercise that we take incoming clients through in order to address all or nothing thinking. We want to overcome perfectionism. In a sense, we're actually overcoming the fear of making mistakes. People will often hesitate to start something or they quit something immediately whenever they make a mistake. They fear messing up. The activity we're going to go through today, I'm going to lead you through it. You can actually follow along with your own details and I'll share my example as we go through it. This is something that we can use to put failure into context, meaning whenever I'm working towards a goal, I have planned actions that I want to take every single day. Sometimes they go well, sometimes they don't. How do we pivot and adjust and manage the days that don't? The activity that we refer to, we call it a pop chart, going through a pop chart. It's progress over perfection, that's the POP. And what we're looking to do is to focus on progressive improvement in our habits, our actions, rather than are we perfect all the time, every single day, under all the circumstances and events that we can't control. That's basically the trouble is we struggle to control ourselves, let alone all the things that happen outside of us. There are going to be days where when we want to do what we should do, quote unquote, it's not feasible. Maybe it was and we just didn't do it for whatever reason, or it was really outside of our control. How do we manage that and continue to move forward? So the pop chart, what we do is we start with the client and we cover what are their goals for each of the component that we're tracking in their process. To give an example, and this is what you can follow along with me today if you'd like, is if we look at nutrition and exercise. When it comes to nutrition, we commonly start with calories. Sometimes we'll count calories, sometimes we do kind of like a caloric control through food selection and meal structure. In this example, we're going to go ahead and use counting calories. It's a little bit easier to do for an audible and visual aid through a podcast. So we're going to count calories. We also have daily protein that we want to consume, and that's for a whole myriad of health reasons. We'll skip all those details just so we can get through today's activity. We're going to track calories, we're going to track protein, we're going to track hydration. That's really helpful for digestive health and muscle health and a lot of other good things. And then exercise. That can look different. All of these elements actually look different for each individual, but those are common components: calories, protein, hydration, and exercise. We would say, okay, what are our targets per day? Now, we know that those are the elements we want to track: calories, protein, hydration, exercise. When we think of what are our targets per day, this is where we start to differentiate between it's either all, as in I do this or nothing. We're getting rid of that all or nothing. So we're going to look at 3 types of days. One is going to be our ideal day. This is something that's a little bit of a reach. It's sustainable if we can control most things, and we're going to be able to do it maybe most days of the week. When everything's going well, we might be able to hit it, say, 5 out of 7 days a week. When everything's kind of going to crap and the world around us is a little chaotic, maybe we only get it 3 or 4 days a week. But it's something that's realistic, but a little bit of a reach. That's going to be our ideal day, and I'll go through the examples here in a second. Then the second variation is we have a good enough day, meaning, okay, it wasn't ideal, but it was good enough. And this is something that we can probably do on almost every day, even if we can't control the whole day in its entirety. Then the third one is the worst day ever. So even on the worst day ever, I can at least do this. And that gives me the sense that I did take a progressive step forward. Now, the this that we do on that day, the something rather than nothing, the something that we do on that day, it's going to feel almost embarrassingly low. I'll give you an example real fast is whenever my wife and I were moving her mother from New Jersey down to the Carolinas where we live, we had to pack up the house and do all this craziness, and it was very little sleep, driving back and forth from Carolinas to New Jersey, a whole bunch of craziness. Absolutely chaotic day. And the one day we spent loading the moving trailer, the truck. It was just my wife and I carrying everything down. And then we caught a couple people in helping us. But we went to bed at like 3 o'clock in the morning, finishing packing everything in the apartment for the most part. And then we got up at 7, so it was 4 hours of sleep. I packed the truck up and down from a 3rd story apartment, no elevator, up and down from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and filled up the truck, had to rearrange the truck, carry stuff back up because of whatever reasons, carry it all back down, then go to the dumpster, then all this stuff. So it was 12 hours nonstop. I ate an entire jar of peanut butter. I kid you not. Whatever the amount of calories are in a jar of peanut butter, I ate the entire freaking thing all day. I had like a chocolate Hershey's bar. I think I had a can of like Denty's Campbell's soup. I don't know what the heck. I was eating anything that was in the house because I was completely destroyed. But at the end of the day, my wife and I went to lay down to go to bed, and I said, shit. I was like, I didn't get my exercise marker. And she's like, are you kidding me? You just packed this trailer for a 12-hour day. I think you're good. And I'm like, yeah, I can't be good because that isn't what the standard was. Now, you don't have to be this crazy. I'm talking about getting over perfection here. I'm talking about being a perfectionist towards the standards. But my worst day ever was 10 push-ups. That was my goal for worst day ever. So I got up out of bed. I did 10 push-ups. I got back in bed and passed out. But that's an example of the worst day ever. Unless I break my arm or tear an abdominal muscle, I'm probably going to be able to do 10 push-ups, at least for me. That's a goal for myself. So I started working out when I was 15. I'm 42, I think, now. So it's been 27 years. The longest amount of time I've ever taken away from working out has been 7 days in a row. Once when I was physically ill and had massive amounts of inflammation, and I threw up actually trying to work out. So I just went for an hour and some walk every single day. The second time I missed a full week, like a Monday to a Monday, was emotional stress. It was the first time I ever experienced anxiety in my life. I know there was this blissful moment before that moment that I actually didn't know what anxiety was. But I had really bad panic attacks that week for the first time in my life and was navigating what that is and what that was. So I ended up having to take some time away from the gym and again just go for long walks. All that said, I've already shared way too much and gotten way off track. But that was an example of what I would consider my worst day ever was 10 push-ups. Yours might be 10 bodyweight squats. It might be 5 bodyweight squats. It might be 1 squat down to a chair and stand back up without using your hands to push off your knees. Literally, it could be anything. There's that phrase they have or that concept where if you make your bed every morning, that's a level of success, about like more than most people, and that sets your day up for success and blah, 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 blah. So there are some people that will believe in that is, if I make my bed every morning, that's something small I can do, but it builds momentum for the day. That's kind of the idea is we're looking to build momentum for days, weeks, months, is that we never really miss a day because even on the worst day ever, we can do X. That's the idea of that. So those are our 3 levels we're looking for is ideal day, good enough day, then worst day ever. And we're looking for that for each of the components. If I look at calories, currently right now my goal is to sustain muscle mass as much as I can, but I'm looking to get leaner. I'm not trying to drop body weight. There's a little bit of a difference there. I'm not just trying to lose weight for the sake of losing weight. I'm wanting to lose body fat. So I'm actually going and getting DEXA scans done about every 12 to 16 weeks or so, seeing that. I'm also taking photos. I do have some tight pairs of shorts that I will check and see, okay, how are they feeling? So I have a couple metrics I'm using in order to track leanness and making sure that I am getting leaner. I do also weigh myself, but I don't let the weight scale be what dictates progress. It's actually what do I see in the photos and how do I feel in my clothes. To me, those are the 2 biggest things. And then the DEXA scan is helpful, although it's very it's inaccurate if you don't have perfect conditions all the time, meaning your water retention might be a little bit different if you have different times of the day, different foods leading into that day, a whole bunch of stuff. So it's a marker, just like the weight scale, it's a marker for me to use, but I'm not going to use it as the sole indicator of whether I'm making progress or not. So calories for me is going to be in a deficit. What I did was I calculated using BMR calculator online and figured out, given my BMR and that our basal metabolic rate is what that is the amount of calories my body needs just to sustain organ function and keep myself alive. So if I was laying in my bed doing absolutely nothing, that's my BMR. That's how many calories I would burn. That's roughly around 70% of our total calorie usage in our daytime. The rest of it is made from us being up and moving, whether that's normal activity like me moving my hands, talking to people, or it's chosen activity. There's even thermic effect of food, how many calories we burn, breaking down the food that we eat. There's a whole lot of things that kind of factor into that other 30%. But I calculated my BMR. I then calculated, okay, what is that 70% of? And for me, that would be roughly around 3,500 calories. So for reference, I'm 252-ish pounds right now at 6 foot tall and not overly fat, more fat than I want. That's why I'm wanting to get leaner, but a decent body type. And my goal would be then is, okay, if 3,500 calories sustains my weight, that means it's going to likely sustain my body fat, sustain my muscle mass. So that's kind of like a maintenance, like a neutral. So I want to be under that. For me right now, I'm varying between 1,000 to 1,500 calories under that per day. It's a pretty aggressive cut. But that is my kind of like target range is 1,000 to 1,500 calories under that 3,500 calorie mark. So I actually don't track my calories per day. I track my deficit per day. And then I calculate that for the week, and I track my weekly amounts, and then I track my weekly averages based on what all those other metrics are doing, and then I kind of track all that data. So for me, my calorie target on an ideal day would be to be 1,000 to 1,500 calories in a deficit. Now you can choose how to manage yours however you want. We've talked about in past podcasts, you can use a BMR calculator, find out what your BMR is. Then you would see, like, if you don't want to do the math of 70%, although that's pretty easy math, you can figure that out. And then that would be your maintenance calories, is your BMR being 70% of whatever that number is. So then you could determine for yourself, do I want to be in a deficit? I'm looking for fat loss. Do I want to be in a surplus if I'm looking to build muscle? Do I want to be actually around maintenance but lift weights really like intensely if I want to improve performance or body composition? You can kind of play with that however you want to do that. Then for protein, my minimum target for me is 1 gram per pound of body weight, which would be 250 grams, roughly. Don't worry about the 2 grams, so not 252, 250. It's easier to remember. So that is what I would consider my minimum. However, some days I'll push up higher, and when I do higher amounts, I feel like I get better recovery from my training. So I do actually like to push higher. Plus I get more satiety from my meals. I don't feel as hungry when I have higher percentage of protein. So I'll actually push usually somewhere between 250 to 400 grams of protein. But what I would consider an ideal day is I got that 250 and usually more. Then for hydration, I usually aim for at least a gallon of fluid a day. If I get more than that, I'm happy. But I get at least a gallon every day. And then exercise, I do lift weights pretty much every single day. The most amount of days off that I take, like in a week, might be 1 or 2. Now, this is because I know how to monitor and control my volume. It's also because I use exercise for my emotional and mental health. So yes, could I take days off if I wanted to? Sure. Is that going to allow me to make faster progress? My argument is no. I've made amazing progress. Back when I started lifting weights, when I was 18, I was 6 foot tall like I am now. I was 165 pounds, and you could grab fat rolls around my waist. So I was a fat kid at 165 pounds. That's not good. So now I'm at 200, and so for example, I would have been way over 20% body fat, way over that. Now I'm at 252 pounds, and the last time I got my DEXA scan I was at like 11 point something percent body fat. So added damn near 100 pounds, almost half the body fat percentage. I'm doing pretty good. I just modify my volume and my intensities and my exercise selection to make sure I take care of my joints as well. So I train roughly 5 to 7 days a week, but I usually aim for 7. On the days where I don't train, usually I'll have a really high step count that day because my wife and I were very active and we were doing something, and it just didn't make sense to try to force the weight training in, and or I am feeling kind of beat up or tired. Maybe I'm going to train a couple clients tomorrow. I'm going to go to this really cool gym that has a lot of fun machines. Well, maybe I'll take today off so I can double up my workout tomorrow and take advantage of all the machines. I've done that a lot. So I'll modify that, but that's what I would consider my exercise goal. Is I either lifted weights, or for me, I use a step count of 5,000 steps. So I lifted weights or I got 5,000 steps. So an ideal day for me is all of those. is I have my calories in a 1,000 to 1,500 calorie deficit. My protein is at 250 grams minimum. My hydration is a gallon minimum. And I lifted weights, which is definitely the one I want. If I couldn't lift weights, though, I got 5,000 steps. So each of those components have their ideal day, but then also my ideal day is I hit all 5 of those. So you can choose to track each individual component on its own. Like how, and I would suggest this, by the way, is how am I doing just in calories alone? How am I doing that every day? And you can track whether that was an ideal day, good enough day, or worst day ever. And then you do that for protein, for hydration, and then for exercise. And then you can also have like an overall type goal. Can I hit 3 of these 4 markers in the ideals? If I do that, then that's considered an ideal day as well. So maybe you went 3 out of 4, your good enough day is 2 out of 4, maybe your worst day ever is like, I got 1, that kind of thing. So you can track how you put these pieces together and the individual pieces themselves. But that's what I would consider my ideal day. For me, that's not necessarily a reach, but it does take meaningful planning and effort every day to make sure I hit all those things and account for those. So that means if I'm going to be traveling out of the house, I'm cooking food ahead of time. Like my wife and I, we went with family to go to, yesterday was Easter, so we went to go to family dinner. I knew that they were going to have some foods that I didn't want to eat, some foods that I probably would want to eat, but just in case, I'm going to take some chicken and rice with me. So I got up early, made sure I got my client work in, got my workout in at home. I then cooked the chicken and rice. My wife was getting ready. We took all that with us. And then it ended up being where we stayed longer after the initial dinner that I needed to eat again. So I had the chicken and rice with me. So that's stuff where I can do it. It's doable, but it did require me to get up early in the morning to get all my client work in so I get my workout in so I could have time to cook the chicken and rice. I then had to take the chicken and rice with me to make sure that worked. And then when we got home, I still had work to do. But that's stuff that I would consider doable, but I would also consider that like a reach in the sense to where I have to put some conscious effort into making sure all those elements balance out throughout the day. Then a good enough day might be, okay, I know my calories, I normally would look for 1,000 to 1,500 calorie deficit. Did I at least get maybe a 500 calorie deficit today? So maybe that's a good enough, is I maybe didn't hit the 1,000 calorie mark, but at least I got to over 500 deficit. Protein, for me, I don't really ever miss the 250, but I could do again saying like, okay, well, did I at least get maybe over 200? Hydration, if my goal is a gallon, did I at least maybe get 3/4 of a gallon? If my exercise goal is the weight training or 5,000 steps, I can't tell you the last time I missed either one of those. It's been decades. But you would basically just kind of pick a lesser version of that. So maybe I couldn't weight train for an hour. Maybe I had to do a 20-minute blitz, and that still counts. So a 20-minute kind of circuity thing was something I was able to do rather than a full hour. That's considered good enough. So that would be an example. Then worst day ever is literally just the worst day ever. For me, calories, that's going to be in any deficit at all. So that way I know I didn't just miss the day completely. So some deficit and I'll be happy. Protein, I like the worst day ever, I don't even worry about protein, that I hit my calories. If I got my calories, whatever the hell the protein was, whatever it was. So I don't even think of that on the worst day ever. And that makes sense because calories is more important and more impactful than protein. So I'm not going to overly worry about something less important. I'm going to focus on that bigger component. Hydration, that one is just when I can drink something, did I drink something? Did I at least be conscious of trying to drink something when I could? If I felt like I gave my honest effort, then I'd be happy with myself that day. Exercise, again, just set up something like, okay, if I couldn't weight train for an hour, if I couldn't even do a 20-minute circuit, did I at least go for a 5-minute walk? Could I just go for a 5-minute walk, clear my head, and just live in some peace and quiet for a second and calm down the noise? Because probably if it's the worst day ever, you've had a pretty shitty day. So you probably would like some little bit of quiet time. But those are examples of what we would look to do. Is our pop chart is listing our individual components. For this example is calories, protein, hydration, and exercise. Then we have the ideal day, which is a little bit of a reach, but it's possible. The good enough day, which is what you can do on most days. And then the worst day ever. You have all these down. Now, what you do with this data is you have all this written down on a chart, so that way it's easy to see. I also would recommend that when you set these goals, you make them memorable, like easy to remember, so they're very concise. and they're action-based. So I did this or I didn't do this. And whatever this is I can say it and word it very quickly, so that way I can remember all these things. So if you notice, as I'm yapping to you, I'm not looking at any notes, I don't have a prompter, teleprompter or anything. These are all things I remember because it's easy to remember. That's what our goal would be, is to, when we set these standards and these goals, make them all things that make intuitive sense. So you're not tracking, did I have 64.7 ounces of fluid today? Don't worry about that. Make it an easy to remember amount. Round off some things. If your calories, for example, and you do some math and it's like, I'm supposed to have 1,645, just make it 1,650. Just round off to the nearest 50, that's fine. For protein, I usually round off to the nearest 10. So if it was 142, I might just say 140. That's fine with me. If it was 147, I might say 150. Yeah. So just round the numbers off, make everything concise, make it easy to remember. You want to be able to recall this throughout the day. So as you're managing a good enough day or a worst day ever, you're not having to look at notes to try to remember what the heck you're supposed to do. You go, oh yeah, okay. Well, if I can't do that, at least I'll do this, and that's good enough. Or if I can't do the good enough, I'm at least going to do this because this is the worst day ever, but I'll be damned if I'm not making progress today. I am absolutely going to make some kind of progress in some way, therefore I'm doing something. That idea. Then, once you have all these elements and components and goals and tasks and action-based whatnot, we then want to track that. I usually track it per day. How'd you do per day? Then we track it throughout the week and say, okay, on calories, how many days did I get ideal? How many days did I get good enough? How many days did I get worst day ever? And then I also like to, at the end of the week, problem solve and kind of figure out, okay, if there was a worst day ever, what happened on that day? And is there a way in the future I could turn that into a good enough day? Was there something that, looking back at it, man, I actually probably could have controlled this element right there. So the next time that comes up, I'll do that. And maybe I'll be able to get a good enough day rather than a worst day ever. So this is what I do with clients in weekly check-ins. So all of our clients we work with, whether in person or online, is we have weekly check-ins via a Google Doc. If they're in person, I talk to them in person. But if it's an online client, we have a Google Doc, and we just check in on the week, say, how'd everything go? I log into their apps. If they do MyFitnessPal, my macros, Macro First, Macro Factor, Chronometer, there's a billion of them. So I just log into whatever theirs is, see how they did throughout the week, how they do on their calories, how they do on their protein, how they do on their hydration, those elements. Like some clients have a Whoop, so we'll track the exercise. Did they get their exercise in? Did they not get their exercise in? And then we problem solve and say, oh man, looks like you had 2 really bad back-to-back days. What happened on that day? And then they'll tell me, and they'll be like, oh, what do you think we could do next time? And we go through that. So that's an important element, is making sure you review. Sometimes people will track these things and then they're just like, oh yeah, that was a rough week, and then they just move on. It's like, well, what the hell? how can we make it maybe not so rough next time? What can we learn from this? We always want to be trying to figure out, how can we learn? How can we make progress? We don't just want to report what we did and then just continue to do it over and over again if it has negative components in it. We want to work on building those missed opportunities. We want to be able to get those in the future. So always want to be a little analytical of what we've been doing, look back throughout the week and try to figure out, was there a lesson learned or not? You don't have to go hypercritical and go nuts and rip yourself to pieces. If you can come out of the week with one thing that you can implement the following week, you did a great job. So that would be good enough. So that's great. That's a good strategy we use. Sometimes clients like to gamify it, so we make points where an ideal day is 3 points, a good enough day is 2 points, the worst day ever is 1 point, and then if you miss that, you're definitely at 0 points. And then we'd say, okay, throughout the week, how'd you do point-wise? Maybe we'll count their calories for the week, how they do compared to the previous week. Maybe we'll count all the elements in total and see, okay, well, how'd you do with all of these elements in total the previous week? And their goal is then, okay, can I increase the points per week? And that allows us to focus on progress over perfection, POP, pop chart. So their goal becomes, how can I make progress, not how can I be perfect? And if I'm not perfect, I'm a failure, everything's, I'm a loser, everything's, wash, I'm destined to be forever not what I want. Get out of that headspace. We want to get into a healthier headspace. So following this pop chart example, this exercise, this activity will be a great idea. If you're going to do that for yourself. If you're a coach or a trainer or whatever, you can take your people through that if you'd like. So all of our one-on-one clients, if you're interested in this type of support, this is part of what we do, along with obviously telling you with your calories, protein, hydration goals, figuring out exercise programming for you specific to your goals. We do the weekly check-ins and all the other fun elements. So that's something, if you're interested, you can learn more about that on our website, www.c3method.com. And then for coaches, if you want to learn how to implement a full, complete nutrition coaching system, that's what we do as well. We educate other trainers. Over half of our clients are trainers. We educate them on how to implement coaching systems. We do that with personal trainers, but also physical therapists, chiropractors, running coaches, massage therapists, CrossFit coaches. So we do that also for other facilities. So I actually manage their clients if they don't want to do that themselves, or we'll actually teach them how to do it. It includes how to set up nutrition programs, how to teach people how to select the right foods, build out meals, with all the things we're talking about now about mental and emotional health tracking and making sure people can track adherence, accountability. Are they making progress correctly? We even talk about how to price the service. We even talk about how to market the service. And if you complete the 3-month process, you get a nutrition coaching certification through C3 Method. Now, who the heck am I? Why do I get to say that I make a certification? Well, I've been doing this for 25 years. I have a whole bunch of degrees, master's in human nutrition, bachelor's in health and physical education, ACSM personal trainer, tactical fitness instructor, run coach, corrective exercise specialist. I think those are all them. Then I've also just worked with 3,000 people on a million different categories. IFBB and Natural Pros in aesthetics, world record holder, national record holders in powerlifting, professional athletes, Olympic athletes, CrossFit Games athletes, Division I athletes, athletes of athletes. So I've been doing this for a lot. And then I taught at the university level, teaching exercise physiology labs, weight training classes, which included nutrition as well. So big, long history, over 3,000 clients, 500 students, all that stuff. So all the information is education backed, but then also very experientially backed. So if you're interested in that as well, you can check it out on our website and then reach out to me on our website, which is www.c3method.com. The 3 is spelled out, by the way, so it's THREE. So CTHREE method.com. Hopefully today's exercise was fun. If you did follow along, there was something to learn from it. If you have any questions, let me know. You can put it in the comment section below or reach out to us on our website. Whatever you need, however you need it, I'm always here and I'm always happy to help. Okay, thank you for listening and thank you for watching.